Welcome back, everybody. This is sort of the Q&A questions and answer video that I promised for my 500 subscribers celebration. And I've got a bunch of questions. I sorted them into Malazan, fantasy, and heavy metal because that's sort of like the three things that I get questions for. And I hope I remember all of them because I'm going to do this off the top of my head because I can't obviously read them up here. So I hope I don't miss any. There's a bunch of doubles in there that I will, combine. So we'll see how that goes. Yeah, also hope it won't start snowing again because earlier today it snowed and it would be weird if I sit here and, in the snow. Anyway, let's get this started. Cheers. On that topic, the question: what would be my favorite Malazan character to have a beer with? And that's a good question because I'm when I go drink beer, I like to talk to people with people and argue with people. So it has to be someone who's actually someone that you can talk with or to. So I don't know who that actually would be. I mean, I would love to have. I guess it would probably be Talk the Younger. I feel he's the kind of person you can actually talk to, and it would be an interesting conversation. So yeah, I guess I'll go with Talk the Younger on that one. Another question is, which god or goddess in the Malazan world would you follow if you had to choose? And that's a really good one because I have no idea. I'm not exactly a godly person. I'm not good with religion, is what I'm saying here. I find it difficult to believe, but that's obviously not an issue with the Malazan world. But I probably needed a god that is a bit more open, not too strict, too organized or whatever. So I guess it might be Queen. It might be the Queen of Dreams. Maybe I feel that might work out well for me. Hopefully. So I don't know about that. So yeah, let's go with the Queen of Dreams. Um, then another one was, in which city in the Malazan universe would you like to live? That's a difficult one. I'm not exactly. I don't know. Large cities are sometimes my thing, but can get super stressful. So I don't know if I'd be up to living in Darujistan all year round. I don't know. It might just probably be Darujistan because Letharas is a bit too grim for me, I guess. Or it might be actually Malaz city on Malaz Island because it got more of this like seedy, grimy kind of thing that I you know could very well live with. But it's either the Rajasthan, I guess, or Malaz city if it has to be a city. So there's that. All right. Another one was, which three minor characters of the Malazan world would I like to learn more about, to know more about? Now that's a difficult one because I always struggle with the definition of minor character. Is it someone who has like just a little, shows up just a little in the books, or is it someone who is like a smaller character when it comes to such things as efficacy or power level? Those are hugely different things. For example, I don't know. Gothos is not exactly showing up that much in, well, only in the Malazan Book of the Fallen at this point, not Karkanos or anything. But is he a minor player or is he a major character? You know, that kind of thing. Now, come to think of it, I mean, I guess Gothos would be another one I would like to have a beer with, although it seems he's more into tea. So three minor characters that I would like to know more about. That, yeah, that's really difficult to answer. I guess up to a point, like the easiest way to go here is to say the three nachts from from the crippled god's island. Although I'm not sure if that's a good idea. um but yeah, it's, I feel it's maybe something like that, or maybe yeah, some of the people from Letheras that we interact with on a more like shorter level, like I don't know, someone like Selush, the embalmeress. I don't know. Um, Maybe some of the other like Tist Edur that we don't get to talk about that much. Um, so I guess that kind of characters. I'm not quite sure there because yeah, what is a minor character and what is not. Another question was like, what would I want the next Malazan book after Walk in Shadow and the Witness trilogy be about? If it's a series or a standalone. And here we come to, yeah, I would like to have to know what happens to Kilava between the Ritual of Telan and Memories of Ice, because with Telan Mass we kind of know that they could just go and fight Jackard or remain dust for millennia, and that's no problem for them. But she's alive, so what did she do all those 300,000 years? That would be something that I would find interesting. On the other hand, the other thing there would be what happens after the Malazan Book of the Fallen, because I think it's in House of Chains, or yeah, I think it's in House of Chains. There is this like quote at the beginning of a chapter which is about Grub, and it's called Lives of the Three. The source that it's supposedly quoted from, the Lives of the Three, and it's like the future first sword of the Empire, Grub, and so forth. And I would like to know what's going on there after all the stuff that has happened in the Malazan Book of the Fallen, or the novel of the Malazan Empire that we have from Esselmont. So that would be my two choices, like either what happens there, or what the hell did what the hell did Kilava do for 300,000 years between the ritual and Memories of Ice and stuff like that happened afterwards. Those would be like the two things that I'm most interested in there. The other question was which if I would be also interested in like what Stephen Erickson should write after those books, if it should be Malazan or something else. I mean, I enjoyed Rejoice, and I did certainly enjoy the Willful Child trilogy, so I would go with maybe something non-Malazan for a change. But if that's not the case, then those were my wishes before for Malazan. Um, an interesting one was, and I'm going to go now. I'll go with that one later on. Another one question would be, what are my favorite characters, my least favorite characters so far? Some of my favorites definitely are Mappo and Icarium. Certainly, Gessler and Stormy, certainly. Um, yeah, as I said, Kilawa definitely as well. Um, so yeah, those would be some of my favorites that I like to hang out with. With least favorite, I'm struggling. It's because it's like either characters that I just personally don't connect with, or characters that are just plain evil. It's like, yeah, of course, I hate Bidithal. That's no big deal. We all knew that already. Um, so that's pretty easy to say. So of course he's. I'm more thinking about along the lines of characters that I just personally struggle with, and find difficult to connect to or understand, and that those would be people like, I don't know, Udinas or Nimander Goli. Those, and obviously Clip, but Clip is an asshole. We all know that. So those would be characters that I struggle with a lot. So yeah, I feel those are more or less the Malazan questions. Obviously, with one left to answer. if I had to form a metal band out of Malazan characters, who would I take, and what kind of metal would they play? And I thought about this a while, and I figured I'll take the three Teblor, Karsa, Delum, and Bayroth, and they would play old school speed metal, the Exciter style speed metal, and Delum Thor would obviously play bass because he's he's stolid, he's reliable, and you need a reliable bass player, otherwise your band will just fall apart. Karsa would play drums because he's the one who always forces people to do stuff. He would also be the singer, which is why I came up with the Exciter idea, and Bayroth would be the guitar player because that kind of makes the most sense, I feel. So yeah, that would be a terrible idea though. But yeah. Okay, so those were, I feel, most. Ah, right, there was one more. How would I talk people into reading Malazan if I wanted to, convince them of reading Malazan, Book of the Fall? And that's a difficult one because I feel it really depends on the person you're talking to. But in general, as I said before, I even made a video on it. It's like Malazan is for everyone. So it's like depending on what the person likes. I would go and say, yeah, this is like you want big action scenes and big magic and shit like that. Go read Malazan. You want to feel super intellectual, pseudo intellectual, and have deep, meaningful things in your books. Go read Malazan. So basically, and if I don't do that, I will just say, you have sword wielding dinosaurs that also have technology. And if that doesn't convince you, I don't know what ever will. So yeah, those are, I guess, the Malazan, mainly Malazan focused questions. Now let's look at some of the general fantasy or book and stuff like that questions. And one question was if I like what German fantasy book I would recommend, whether in German or in English translation. It's a question by Dr. Philip Chase, and I have just the book for you, and it's called Stein und Flöte by an author called Hans Behmann. It was apparently translated into English at some point as The Stone and the Flute. Although my very, very short search basically shows that it's out of print for ages and you can basically not get it anywhere in English. Maybe, apparently not even as an ebook. But that book in general is an amazing piece of work. It's in German. It's also called a Märchenroman, a fairy tale novel. But that should not trick you. It's a very philosophical book. It uses the language and the metaphor and the imagery of fairy tales. With talking animals sometimes and stuff like that. But it deals with relatively mature themes over the whole thing. It's something of a coming of age story, but so much more. It basically follows the life of a character called the listener. He's trying to figure out his place in life and learning to actually be the person that his name implies him to be, in a way. And there's a lot more going on in there, so I can really recommend it. It's If you can read it in German, it's well worth it because the language is really wonderful for German fantasy fiction, which is something that is rarely the case. I feel a lot of German fantasy that I've read, which is not that much, uses a very functional kind of language. It's not very poetic, but this one is very poetic, and just a very unique piece of very unique story. It has its very own feeling. It's not easily comparable to what we would nowadays consider our fantasy staples or anything like that. It has a bit more of the mythical, of the legendary in it, and of the fairy tale, obviously. So yeah, that's the German fantasy story that I would recommend to everyone who can lay their hands on it, either in German or in English. It apparently also exists in French. So if you understand French, then there is also a French translation of that, apparently, that I will not even begin to pronounce because I can't do that. My French is broken. So yeah, there's that. All right. Next one is have I ever read Stephen R. Donaldson's novels of Thomas Covenant, The Unbeliever? And the answer is no. And there's like two reasons for that. The one reason is that for a long time, because of like region restrictions and stuff like that, there were no unabridged audiobook versions of those available to me. So that's the big reason. The other one is that like very early, like years and years and years ago, I tried to read the first book. I started the first chapter, and I was a much less, much less experienced reader, and I didn't get through that first chapter of the first of Lord Falsbane, when where he's basically just talking about his leprosy and stuff like that, and that I just never went beyond that at the time. And it was also like, it was at the time I definitely had trouble with the language, and the highly illegally obtained audiobook file also broke after that part, so I never actually managed to chase down the full thing. I have, however, at this point, um, added the first two, because now they're like, since last year or something, they were actually available. So I have added the first books of the Thomas Covenant series to my Audible library at this point, and they will definitely be read sooner rather than later. And then I can also say something about how I feel they compare to the Malazan Book of the Fallen. But at this point, I have not read Stephen R. Donaldson. As I said, I've been aware of it for ages. Just never, there was not many chances for me to actually read those. What other fantasy series that do I like? One of my favorite fantasy series, and also non-fantasy books. All right, that's pretty simple. Like, my favorite fantasy series, if you want to call it a series of all time, is, apart from Malazan, which I really enjoy, is the is obviously Discworld by Sir Terry Pratchett. That is just in its entirety such an amazing piece of work that has had such a huge impact on my life in general. Like, I've read at least some of those books, not all of them. There's some that I don't like that much. But I've read all of them, and I've read some of them like 10 times at least at this point. Like, my favorite ones, I don't know, Guards, or even The Color of Magic and Light Fantastic. I've read those like at least 10 times at this point. Also, obviously, Soul Music, which is, when it comes to the standalone ones, obviously the one that I personally get the most out of. So there's that. That's definitely, Discworld is my main thing outside of the Malazan Book of the Fallen when it comes to that. Then, the classics, Lord of the Rings, Tolkien. I'm a Tolkien fan. And I might have, in the near future, I might actually have a very cool Tolkien chat on this on this channel in the near future, because I will be releasing a metal album by a doom metal band called Olorin. That is a concept album focused on just the fall of Gandalf and his return. And we're gonna have us a chat about how Tolkien, how it is to adapt the Tolkien stuff into lyrics, how to deal with that kind of thing, and nerd out on general Tolkien lore, I guess. But that's in the near. It's in the future, but in general, yes, I'm a Tolkien fan. I've always been a Tolkien fan. I'll always be one. It Because I'm always also obviously someone who's very interested in all kinds of mythology and stuff like that. So I feel connected to that in a way. What other fantasy? Like, in general, I've said that before. I enjoy angry writers, or writers that have whose personal convictions can be read in their prose. I've obviously started talking about it, and I will definitely talk about the other two books in that series as well when it comes to fantasy. The Land Fit for Heroes trilogy by Richard K. Morgan is something that I feel is way underrated, or maybe not underrated, but far too little known for its qualities. It's incredible. I've read it a lot of times, and I really, really, really feel gripped by it. Um, then obviously the classics of Sword and Sorcery, Fritz Leiber's Lankmar series, Robert E. Howard stories, Clark Ashton Smith stories. I'm not so much of a of an H.P. Lovecraft fan. There's some good stories in there, but I struggle more with Lovecraft than the others of that like Weird Tales era. What else? Jack Vance. I feel Jack Vance is another one of those authors I really enjoy, but that doesn't get enough praise out there. It's both the Dying Earth series, the Planet of Adventure stuff, not so much. I did recently read, like 2 years ago, I feel, the Lyonesse trilogy, and that one is another one that I really, really enjoyed for its interesting, weird mix of fairy tale and like legendary and stuff like that with fantasy elements. And yeah, Jack Vance was a master of prose, a master of really good writing, and I really, really, really enjoy his stuff. Another one, obviously, Gene Wolfe. Gene fucking Wolfe, go read his stuff. Like, seriously, the Book of the New Sun is one of the most fantastic, like, when it comes to, like, just the sheer power of the prose and the mysteries, the majesty in there. It's just like, everyone should read that, and then they should read it again and again and again, because yeah, it's so difficult to actually understand it. But I really, really love that, and I haven't read the Latro and the Mist series yet, because once again, there's no audiobooks for that. And Gene Wolfe, yeah, I don't want to, do that with a screen reader. That's brutal. I did enjoy the Wizard and Knight by Gene Wolfe, the Wizard Knight series, which is like two-book series, so not exactly a big thing, which mixes Arthurian legend with Norse mythology. And if that sounds like something you're into, then go ye forth and read. So that's some of the fantasy stuff I enjoy. When it comes to the weirder side of things, I am a huge fan of everything Lavi Tidar does, and of everything that Cameron Hurley does, because once again, angry and way out there, Lavi Tidar is refreshingly disrespectful to everything. I just realized yesterday, 2 days ago, I found out that I actually did not notice that he released a new book. It's called By Force Alone, and he takes on the King Arthur stories, and I bought it immediately, and I can't wait to get into it, because God damn it, this sounds so good. Because if you call King Arthur an over-promoted gangster, I am on your side, and I really want to read that. So there might be a video real soon where I actually go and tell you all about how great this is. So yeah, those things. When it comes to non-fantasy stuff, and I'm slowly edging towards the non-fantasy stuff in fiction. I do like things like Thomas Pynchon, whom I got way over my head when I first read it. I think Against the Day, like a decade ago, and I didn't understand half of what I should, but I've stayed with it, and I really enjoy the kind of stuff that Pynchon does. Same with Umberto Eco, these like weirder things. I'm a huge fan of the Illuminatus trilogy by Robert Shea and Robert Wilson, and because paranoia and conspiracy stuff, when it still was fun, we didn't have to struggle with those people trying to take over governments, is something that I enjoy a lot. Another one, apart from like classics that I've said before, for example, Paradise Lost had a huge impact on me when I read it, and stuff like, I don't know, Herodotus history, or Xenophones, and the March Up Country, that kind of thing, is something that I've read a lot of, and I do actually enjoy that kind of thing. Um, but yeah, apart from that, it's more like this kind of like sort of postmodern meta fictional stuff that Echo and Pinchan do. I certainly also really enjoy, or not enjoy, but was really moved by some of the stuff that Cormac McCarthy does. I would always I will always exalt Blood Meridian over The Road. I know a lot of people from our like more nerdy communities are huge fans of The Road. I personally prefer Blood Meridian for its sheer rawness and brutality. But yeah, that's sort of the stuff I enjoy reading. I mean, there's obviously more, but that's sort of obvious. And of course, the other big thing, Winnie the Pooh, the best book ever written. So there's that. Yeah, I just remembered that there was another thing that kind of forgot to answer, was like which Malazan book I've changed my mind on the most through the rereading. And I guess it's the obvious answer there. It's Gardens of the Moon, which I definitely have. I feel it's the one where when you first reread it, you realize all the stuff that is like the groundwork is laid there. So that's why rereading Gardens of the Moon for the first time gives is almost like reading a new book in a way, reading another book in a way. So there, I guess that would be Gardens of the Moon that I have, you know, between my first and second read of Garden of the Moon. That's what changed the most, I guess. All right. So, what's my favorite movie or TV show? I don't have a favorite TV show. Maybe Futurama. That's maybe the thing for a TV show. And favorite movie? That's difficult to say. I would probably go with something Stanley Kubrick in the end. That's probably A Clockwork Orange. I also read the book, and the book is amazing. The movie is amazing, and it's like relentlessness in a way. That would probably be my favorite movie. Not one, that I. It's not fun to watch that, but it's something that really touches me on an emotional level, I guess. So there's that. Currently watching. I'm not watching anything at the moment. I don't watch TV for like semi obvious reasons, because watching TV or like any kind of shows on Netflix or wherever, I'm not a huge fan of this like audio description stuff for blind people. It really kind of bothers me. Might just be difficult for me to come to terms with the fact, because it's kind of it makes you very much aware of your handicap, and that's something that I struggle with a lot. But yeah, I don't watch TV. I never was a huge TV watcher, even when I could see enough to actually watch it, because that was still in the days of linear television, and I hate structure, and being there every week for a specific show, that was never my thing. So yeah, and the last movies I watched in a movie theater have been like years ago. I think I don't know what was the last time I went to a movie. I remember watching Inherent Vice, the Pynchon adaptation. I remember watching that in a movie theater, and oh yeah, right. The last one was the Redux talk, whatever, like the last version of Apocalypse Now that was in the movie theaters like a year and a half ago, 2 years ago, something like that. That whole plague year, obviously, was something else. So yeah, those were the last times I went to watch an actual movie, on like sort of new movie. Sometimes we watch like a movie here at our apartment. The last thing I watched there was Waltz with Bashir, which is impressive but not fun. If you haven't watched it, go do. It's something you will not forget, but it's also not something that will make you happy. But as an exploration of trauma, of warfare, it's a very powerful thing. All right. So while my neighbors are having a lot of fun, apparently, let's go to the next one. Beer recommendations. The beer questions are a bit of a problem because I don't know anything about beer. It's like, what's your favorite beer? And the answer is cold and cheap. I try to strike a balance between those, and obviously there are some beers that really don't taste that good unless you have had already like 4 or 5 before then. Then after the fifth beer, everything tastes the same anyway, so that's a different thing. I do personally enjoy dark beers, whether it's like the Czech darker beers or like the East German Schwarzbier. I do prefer those darker beers above lighter beers. That's the general thing I can say. But beyond that, I rarely have like very like favorite brands or anything. I'm a basic person. I don't go in for like super fancy stuff. I mean, I try it, I drink it, I don't complain. Well, if you let me pick beer in a fully stocked store, I will usually pick something that has one of these pop-off bottle tops because I'm a huge fan of those, because they're just very, very practical. It's like you close up your beer, and if you by accident throw it over or whatever, it doesn't spill the beer, which is handy, and it kind of keeps fresh if you're not drinking fast enough. So yeah, but apart from that, I'll just pick something dark and or something with a really dumb name or really cool bottle design, because I'm a sucker for dumb marketing ideas, like seriously. So yeah, when it comes to beer, like recommendations of beers you can get in Canada was one thing asked for. I have no idea what kind of beer you can get in Canada. I know that my one friend from British Columbia bought a lot of Radeberger recently, and that's a decent German Pilsner from like a larger brewery. But if you can get that kind of thing in your place, then go ahead. You could buy worse beer, is what I'm trying to say. It's the same with like, what's your favorite brewery? And I feel that's something that's difficult to explain. So Germany, obviously, a lot of like Europe, Germany, Czech Republic, I guess, Poland, maybe, have had, but especially Germany has had this tradition of local breweries forever and ever. So the whole idea of like this microbreweries, craft beer kind of thing that happened in the last, I don't know, 2 decades at this point, I guess, never really took that much hold in Germany, because there was never a need for that. Because when you go, especially to like southern parts of Germany, to Franconia or Bavaria, like every village has at least one or two small breweries that just brew locally and sell to the local pubs and stuff like that. So there's that, and it makes it super difficult to have a favorite brewery. Like, if we would still have a local brewery in Marburg, which we don't at the moment, or nothing like really like your basic brewery, that might just be one. I also love the idea of this is like something that is very specific to a specific part of German, like Bavaria, the Upper Palatinate, where you have the tradition of the Zeuge beer, which is a communal brewing. So the village has a communal brewing house where they meet and then they brew beer together, and it is then sold by different places in the village while it lasts, to passers-by. It's not sold in bottles. Usually it's not sold in bottles or anything to people to take home in a large quantity. It's mostly sold like fresh from the barrel to mostly hikers and people from the village, who then actually drink that stuff there. It's a really cool tradition, and it's like, since it's basically just brewed like once per year or in a regular, like every batch of it tastes slightly different because it's not like in any way industrialized in a way. So there's that, and I really appreciate that kind of story, because yeah, it's communal. Isn't that cool? I do like that kind of thing. All right. Luckily, I came prepared. We're gonna go into the last bit, music and stuff. Cheers. So I got a lot of questions about that, about my favorite bands, my favorite, all these stuff, and I'm trying to figure out how to answer all of them so they don't, overlap or anything. Especially with that one question by Professor Tripp, who asked for like my musical journey in a way. So I'll try to tell that story, and then we'll see where it goes from there. Which parts of the questions I haven't answered, and then we'll see where it goes. So my musical journey starts somewhere completely different. I grew up with my mother, and she's very well educated and very much not into popular music. She's mostly into classical music, so that's what I grew up with a lot of classical music. I've seen my fair share of operas performed in opera houses and stuff like that, and I appreciate that background. But I obviously needed something to rebel when I started actively listening to music, and I fixed on punk rock, and that's where I started out with it. Mostly started out with either like radical, like German punk, like Slime and bands like that, which are like on the more like political end of German punk rock, and that's sort of where I started listening to obviously also American stuff, like Bad Religion, NoFX, your Rancid, your usual like California melodic hardcore, whatever you want to call it stuff. We call it Calicore at some point, that kind of thing. That's where I started listening to music. And then with a little bit of metal, but not much, mainstream stuff like Metallica and Iron Maiden. And then when I was young, 15, 16, when my visual issues really kicked in, I changed schools. I came to a boarding school for visually impaired and blind people. We lived there in like groups of 5-6 people. As I said, it was a boarding school, and I had a friend there, someone I met there. Like the first couple of weeks I was there, and I was there for like a half a year, and then we had like Christmas holidays, and I remember I came back from that, and he came back and he had met a friend. Was it the boyfriend of his sister or some relative or whatever, who had introduced him to the German, and this is such a German story. So he had introduced him to the German metal band Blind Guardian. We're going to come back to them again and again, I guess. And after we had like some money left over from Christmas, so we went to a local record store when those still existed, and he bought a Blind Guardian album and some hip hop album. I have no idea at this point what it was. Some hip hop album, and I keep forgetting what. I think a Bad Religion album at the time. And we came back, and because his room was like on the second floor, my room was on the first floor of the house, and we ended up in my room, like trying out all those records. And then he went upstairs to his room later in the evening, and he left that Blind Guardian album with me. And for the next like 2 weeks, I just listened to that one album all the time. I realized that's what I want. So I went back to the record store and bought Blind Guardian's Nightfall in Middle-earth. And that's obviously a full concept album on the Silmarillion, and I was super happy because I just read the Silmarillion. And for the first time, I was super excited, and then I went back and bought Battalions of Fear, which is the first Blind Guardian album, which is super like old school speed metal and very different from their later stuff. And then things happened from there on. I just started spending all my leftover money on heavy metal records mostly for a long time. That's basically, as they say, the rest was history. So that's sort of how I ended up in heavy metal, and from there on I kind of drifted into the further like parts of the underground. I remember I went to my first Keep It True festival, which is for the traditional underground, in 2008, I think. Must have been 2008. I know there was Manila Road and Jack Panzer and Titan Force and Omen and Doomsword and Attacker had playing that show. I went there with a friend from Australia and a friend from Canada, and it was a lot of fun. It really was. But by that point, I was already in like the more traditional underground, which kind of answers that question of what's sort of my favorite genres is traditional 80s heavy metal, epic metal, and the epic doom metal stuff. Your Candlemass and Solitude Turners, that kind of thing. That's sort of, I mean, I listen to a lot of stuff, but that's where my heart is. It's like with Manila Road and Broca's Helm and Serathungal and the epic stuff, where the sword and sorcery stories and like lyrics are about sword and sorcery heroes, where you have all your Conan and Elrics and stuff like that. So where those two interests of mine, heavy metal and fantasy stories, kind of combine. So yeah, I spent time there and I got like further involved in that. And I started writing reviews for a German website on heavy metal. That's fun. And at some point, I actually, sort of by accident, bought a CD from a German mail order called, or the band was called Molasses, and the album was called And the Rift of the Pan-Dimensional Undergods, and I was very much in love with that. And I followed that band all the way. And then I did an interview with them. First I messaged them about their new album because I didn't have any promotion in Europe. And I'm like, hey, can I get us to review it? Because I'm into this. And then I made a fateful decision. I asked them, so why aren't you playing shows in Europe? And they're an American band. They said, like, we'd love to, but we have no contacts. And I made the dumb mistake of saying, yeah, I know some people, I can maybe do something. At this point, I had by accident organized one concert. I feel like one show, maybe two. No, one show. And at that point, yeah, they said, like, I can help you. And then I asked around with some friends, and after a while I had like 3 or 4 shows set up for them in different places of Europe. And I'm like, hey, there's that. And they're like, okay, that's cool. Would you like to actually book our entire tour and be tour manager? And I said, yeah. So that's how that started, that madness, in a way. And from there, things like went on. It's like, we did that tour. It was actually a lot of fun. No one got rich there because that's not how that works. And then I did it again for a second tour, and for that second tour there was an EP that was supposed to be released, which is really cool. And we decided to press the CDs in Europe because it makes sense to have the CDs here and not ship them, like take them in the luggage from the US, because that's dumb for a European tour. So I said, yeah, I can handle that. I can, ask like a manufacturer for CDs and get that shit organized. So I did. And then we figured out that it makes a lot of sense because of shipping costs to send, like, at least the orders that are from Europe, to send that stuff from Germany because it's much cheaper. And so I did that. And then we figured that it makes a lot of sense to actually register a business for that, because then you get business rates with shipping. So I did that. And then I suddenly had a record label. And that's how I came to that problem. Because during the tour, the bass player said, like, hey, would you like to release like my other band's album? And I'm like, yeah, sure, I can do that as well. And then, yeah. I didn't plan this, and I obviously had no idea what I was doing. So that's how I came into running this kind of record label thing, and I'm still figuring out how to do it. When it comes to playing a musical instrument, it's like I learned how to play guitar, but I'm a very undisciplined person, a very lazy person, and I don't practice enough. I also know how to make noise on the bagpipes. I'm loud. I'm not very good at it. I can sort of do it, but I need to practice a lot more. And practicing bagpipes is exhausting. and it also can get you into all kinds of trouble with your neighbors. Or so I've heard. But yeah, so that's sort of my musical journey. So at this point, I'm still doing the label thing, and I'm trying to figure out how to actually do the label thing, how to make it work, and yeah. Um, but yeah, so my favorite genres, as I said, are the traditional heavy metal, the doom metal, the epic metal. Someone asked for like a genre that I don't like. It's mostly modern, like very modern death metal, brutal death metal, your gen modern progressive stuff, that kind of thing. Because I'm relatively focused on vocals, and I feel a lot of modern death metal vocalists sound very, I don't know, indistinguishable. They lack character. When you look at your old school death metal, your, I don't know, your Asphyx or your Possessed and stuff like that, those people have like very different like voices, even when it comes to the brutal side of singing. With a lot of the new stuff, that's just not there, and I just find that boring. Someone asked for recent albums that I find really good. There's, for the epic doom part, I would say "Preserved in Time" by Wheel from Germany. That album is, I think it came out last week, or yeah, I think it came out on Friday, and it's an absolute masterpiece. If you like your Solitude Eternus or your Democracy from Crete, that's the kind of thing there, and it's really, really, really good. Another one that's probably going to be like at the end of the year, one of my top albums of the year is going to be from a French band, actually from Bretagne, and the band is called Herzel, and the album is called, and I'm going to butcher this, Le Dernier Rempart, and I can only say they sing in French, and it's an absolute marvel of an album. That's one I really enjoyed. Before that, I'm obviously consciously leaving out stuff that I released myself, because I obviously think that all the stuff I released myself is great. Otherwise, I wouldn't do it. But I feel it would be also kind of dishonest to say that's the best stuff that came out, because, you know. But before that, by an Italian band, one of my all-time favorite bands, Dark Quarterer, did an album last year called Pompeii, about, well, the volcano and the city and everything. And that's, like, every single Dark Quarterer album that is out there is just, yeah, amazing. They're an amazing band, and everyone should listen to them, and far too few people do these days. So I guess those are like three semi-recent albums that I really, really enjoyed from the more traditional side. There's obviously stuff from the like more modern things. I did enjoy the last Dark Tranquility. I did enjoy the last Communic. Stuff like that. But those I feel deserve more recognition in a way. All right. Yeah, favorite bands, all-time favorite bands is something that I was asked several times. From the big classics, definitely Jethro Tull. Yeah, I try to deny it most of the time, but I am sort of an intellectual sometimes, and I enjoy everything Ian Anderson does with his lyrics, the music. I'm just a huge fan of that. Jethro Tull is probably one of my all-time favorite bands. Outside of any kind of genre, they're just great. I even had like a chance to interview Anderson once. Unfortunately, the whole thing was not published because the tape broke, and I would have had to do like heavy editing on the whole thing, because we didn't talk much about music, but I got a lot of information about politics, Formula One racing, and public transport, among other things. So there's that. I also saw Jethro Tull 2 years ago, in 2019, when we still had lives in Athens, in the amphitheater there, and that was just amazing. So yeah, there's that. Other like all-time favorite bands in the metal area, definitely Manila Road is one of my favorite bands. I was very, very like honored and happy that I actually got the chance to book them for a show once. They were like super nice people to talk to. Mark Shelton was an absolute legend of a person. apart from his like musical heritage, he was an absolute monster of a person. Um, Broke a Sound, Sirathungal, Doomsword, that kind of stuff. Definitely Darkwater, as I said. I was lucky that I started doing this like sort of by accident. This epic metal festival called Riddle of Steel. Maybe if you're lucky, we'll have another one this year, in December. And I was lucky that I got quite a few of those bands that I really, really enjoy to actually play there. Among them, Darkwater. Last time we had Atlantean Codex play there. We had Battle Roar there. The kind of stuff that I really, really enjoy. Um, so yeah, yeah, that story of Riddle of Steel might be another one of those that is part of like my musical journey, because that's, and it's also something I'll try to maybe I'll go back to it in a minute or so. Um, so yeah, non-metal bands, non-metal artists. Although the person who asked that question typed non-mental, and I'm not quite sure if that was actually, because that makes it quite difficult. Non-metal. Yeah, as I said, punk rock, Bad Religion, NoFX, some of the German stuff, definitely. Apart from that, I'm partial to a lot of the like late '60s, early '70s English folk, acid folk, psychedelic folk, folk rock, electric folk stuff. Your Fairport Convention, Incredible String Band, Griffin, basically everything and anything that Sandy Denny sang in. She's probably one of my favorite singers of all time. That voice is just incredible. So there's that. Another one I really enjoy listening to is Townsend Zand, for when I really want to feel not happy. So yeah, there's that. Like I feel those things, and obviously a lot of like '70s prog and stuff like that, krautrock, that kind of thing. But it's there's so much out there that I find difficult to actually pinpoint. I would say like late '60s, early '70s English folk stuff, definitely. When it gets a bit more rocky, from Ireland, the Horselips, definitely a band you should check out. Go check out the Horselips; they're incredible. Um, yeah, that's sort of where I'm at when I'm not listening to metal. I would say is most of that folk and stuff like that. All right. All right. What else? Um, yeah. Someone asked, Christine from Norway asked about my favorite Nordic metal band. Now that's a difficult question. What you consider Nordic there. Um, One that I personally enjoy, but I'm also friends with them, so that maybe a bit of an issue there. I might be biased. Is from Oslo, Norway, Magister Templi. If you're into Lovecraft or Egyptian mythology and raw heavy metal, then with a slight doom touch, they're definitely a good choice to go to. I do enjoy some of the more like raw, like more epic side of what you might call folk or pagan metal. Not so much the party side. So I would go like, I don't know, maybe Moon Sorrow from Finland, definitely something I enjoy. Helheim from Norway with their approach to mixing like black metal and folk influences in a way. Enslaved, obviously, as well. That kind of thing is when it comes to the Nordic stuff, I guess. Christine also asked about where I get all my shirts from. Um, from concerts. That's the sad truth of this is that I have like, I don't know how many t-shirts, but definitely more than 100. It might be like 300 shirts or so. I have not counted in a while, but I try to go to as many concerts as possible, and usually while slightly euphoric after the consumption of a bunch of beers and trying to boil off excessive energy in the front row, I usually go and buy a t-shirt or two. So almost all the shirts I'm wearing were bought on either at festivals or at concerts, almost all of them. So basically, I don't think I own a single T-shirt from a band that I have not seen live at this point. I would need to think real hard about that, but most of the time I don't pick like my T-shirts. I have this huge pile because I'm terrible with organization. I just grab the first T-shirt that I can find in the morning. And that's what I put on. So there's no big thought process behind it, in a way. But yeah, that's where I got all my T-shirts from shows, and I can't wait for shows to start again so I can go back to doing that. Yeah. Yeah, just go to metal shows again and to festivals and meet all these people that I've met over the years at these shows and talk with them about music all day long. So yeah, there's that. What else was there? There was a question about would I ever do music reviews on my channel? I don't think so. As I said, I'm writing music reviews. I'm not sure how, so I don't see myself as much of a reviewer at this point, especially with the book stuff. I do write the music reviews and I enjoy that, definitely. But I usually want to talk about stuff that I really, really enjoy. And I feel that in this day and age, especially on YouTube, you can just go and listen to the music instead of me listening to me talking about the music. So I'm not quite sure if I would ever do that kind of thing. So probably not. I mean, if you all want to hear me talk about music from time to time, I can certainly do something about that. Sure. Tell you all these war stories from all these festivals where I did dumb shit and stuff like that. That's a possibility. But I don't think I'll do music reviews. That's not my kind of thing. Something more deeper analysis kind of thing, maybe. We'll see. So yeah, that kind of connects to exactly one of those things. Someone asked about the connection between Tolkien and heavy metal. And I feel that's a difficult one. The short answer is we're all nerds. We love Tolkien, and so we also like to sit at home and listen to heavy metal. I feel there's more to it. I'd love to actually do a full video on all these interconnections between fantasy and literature in general and heavy metal, mostly heavy metal, and a bit of 70s hard rock stuff. I feel that might be well worth actually having a longer video about it, so I guess something like that I can certainly do. What else did I miss? Yeah. Do I make notes for books while I'm reading them for the analysis? The answer is no. I am a terrible person. And I rarely make notes. For the videos, I almost never make notes. Sometimes I write down some bullet points, read through them, then delete them, and then switch on the camera and say something entirely different. But I'm not good with planning. And what I usually do is, these days with the Malazan stuff, I listen to it on audio while I do my morning workout. And I do 75 minutes of cardio every morning. That's sort of I'm listening on 1.5 speed at this point, so that's 2 hours of listening just through cardio, and then I have a cup of tea, and that's sort of where I get the rest of the chapters done before I talk about them. And I just let them settle for a while over the day, and then I switch on the camera and talk about what I still remember. That's sort of how I do that at this point. So yeah, that's I don't plan. I'm really bad at these kind of things. Yeah, that leads to, I guess, that one last one that I feel that Ola asked. What are the best and worst aspects of having the record label, the experiences of the record label. That's a difficult one. So the best thing is like how the record label feels like something of like the culmination of all the other things that I've done. So I feel a lot of this is me becoming myself, or is very much a personal journey of being like coming to terms or trying to come to terms with my handicap and all these other things, right? So that's always been a big issue in my life. It's like that's like the best parts of it and the worst parts of it are connected to that. So I'm someone who really, really, really hates being dependent on other people. It's something I struggle with every day of my life. I don't want to be dependent on other people. So I'm constantly doing stuff or like testing out those limits the universe kind of presents to me. That's something I do all the time. I wasn't always like that. I was a bit more shy at some point, but I'm also an impulsive person. And the best parts of this is like the record label in all the things, how it came to be, is sort of the culmination of this story of how I developed as a person. There's toxic masculinity in there. There's dumb impulsiveness in there. There's all this. But there's also friendship in there, and a lot of other things. Years and years ago, years and years ago, I wanted to go to a festival relatively close to where I live now, together with a bunch of friends. And shortly before that festival, I broke up with my girlfriend at the time. And she obviously also wanted to go to that festival. And so I decided to go there with my friends. And she's like, I'm going there with my friends. And I'm like, yeah, sure. But I'm going there with my friends. It's all good. You know, the end of a relationship, and you're trying to be independent and strong and all that shit. Then the festival was extended to 2 days. And we obviously, at the end of like a longer relationship, you have these moments where you have to, still talk to each other, to, exchange stuff that's at each other's places and stuff like that, And she's like, yeah, so I'm going with my friends to both days of the festival. And I'm like, me too. Obviously. And then the weather forecast came out, and they're like, hey, it's gonna rain on Friday. And she's like, so me and my friends decided to not go there on Friday because of the weather, and it's literally like half an hour to an hour drive from here where I live, so it wasn't super close. And here's where the dumb toxic masculinity comes in. It's like, I'm still going for 2 days. And then I talked to my friends, and they're like, no, we looked at the weather forecast. We're not gonna go there on Friday. We want to go there for Saturday. And I'm like, shit, I'm still gonna go there. Is what I did. And I figured like going to like an unknown festival, if you're blind, is something of a challenge. But on the other end, I couldn't because of being dumb. And that's what I call toxic masculinity there. It's like I couldn't bow out of there. It's like I have to go there. So I figured I can do that because, as I said, it's super close. If I figured out that I couldn't actually do it because of the blindness thing, I could just go back home in the evening because it's not that far away. So I decided to do that, and I did, and I met some friends some people on the train station from Australia and Italy and Canada, and they kind of took me in, and I stayed the entire weekend with them, and we had a lot of fun. And I didn't find my tent in the middle of the night, so I wanted the campground for until the sun came up, and all these other fun things that happened during that weekend. I even caught a drumstick at some point, which was a miracle. But yeah, that kind of gave me a lot of confidence that I could actually do these kind of stupid things, in a way. And 10 years later, we had this idea the festival was headlined by Manowar, and that's where we met. And then in 2017, Manowar decided to start their final battle tour. And we all know that obviously they never stopped touring that because farewell tours by bands never happen. But they're like, hey, it's been 10 years since we know each other. We would come over for the show in Frankfurt. And I'm like, awesome. celebrate 10 years of friendship because we're still in contact and everything. Like, we do that. But the show, the Manowar show was on Friday. And I'm like, you know what? I've started booking some local shows from time to time. And those people come over from Australia and Canada. It would be cool to have something on Saturday to put in. Like, they pay for the flights. I don't. So maybe I can organize a local show, and if not enough people show up, I'll just cover the rest of the cost from my money. So I did that. I asked around some bands that I knew or had met before, and was like, hey, would you like to play there? And within a weekend, I had like 7 bands saying yes. And suddenly it was not just a small concert, but in the end we had 9 bands playing there, and it was the first Riddle of Steel. And that's why, it's like a combination of all of these things, because when I started the record label in the way that I told earlier, a lot of the bands that have like ended up on the record label are bands that I've like spoken with or worked with during Riddle of Steel as well. So it's all these things to kind of come together. And that's like the positive side of it for me, is like the community and friendship part of it. And this is not, making money at all. That's not how underground metal works. But it's very much about doing something, giving back in a way, doing these things for people that I really, really like, that I appreciate as human beings in a way. Now, being able to do that is something that I'm really, really grateful for, and that's the great part about this record label thing. The negative parts about it are, I guess, yeah, they're there, trust me. One of them is definitely personal stress. Because it's very much what we're doing there is very much a personal thing. Whether I want that or not, it's very much connected to me as a person. The image of the label, the reputation of that record label is very much connected to myself. If I don't answer emails like promptly, if there's something goes wrong with an order, with a CD I ship out or a vinyl I ship out or anything like that, this all falls back immediately on the entire thing. And that can become really stressful because it means I have to do all of that stuff. And I had, like, as I said, I had like something of a rough patch over like New Year's, and I couldn't, because I kind of burnt out there for a while, and I couldn't actually get myself to reading emails and answering emails, and that's like a huge hit in professionalism there, because I'm not professional. I try to, but I'm not, and dealing with that. And the other bit there is, unfortunately, once again connected to the handicap thing. It's like there's some things I can't do because I just physically can't do them. I can't do some of the graphics stuff, like the simple graphic stuff that everyone could do. If there's like bureaucracy stuff that I need to do, and I need to fill out forms, tax forms or whatever, in physical paper form, I can't do that. I need to ask someone, and that's always super, super difficult for me. And that's sort of the negative aspects, are the constant stress of being available 24/7 and getting these things done. And like the problem is with I don't want to say mental health, but the thing is, I get diagnosed with ADHD like a decade ago or something. I tried to do medication and it didn't work, so I'm not doing it anymore. But it definitely has an impact on my daily life. It's like I'm super enthusiastic and have all these great ideas, but when it comes to the actual like buckling down and doing the nitty-gritty stuff, then I really struggle from time to time. So I just sit there and like, I just need to answer these emails. That's not gonna, that's not difficult work. I could do that. But there's all these other shiny things that I need to do before, and I'm the king of I'm king of procrastination. I can tell you that. Those are sort of the difficult parts. There is like, on the one hand, there's like no way to learn these things. There's no like course to read, to do, or book to read, or like how to run a record label. I'm figuring out all these things on my own, mostly by talking to friends from time to time who do similar things and trying to figure this shit out. And on the other hand, having these limitations where I'm like, I know other people could do that super quickly, but I can't. I need to ask for help because, on the other hand, since this is not exactly a commercial success, I can't pay people, right? It's a sad truth, but graphic artists are always underpaid. That's just how it is these days. Artists in general are always grossly underpaid. But with graphic design and stuff like that, it's that thing. It's like I can't pay someone to design my press kit thing because to pay them a fair price would be a lot of money. Like, not a lot of money, but would be like 200 euros for a press kit, to be fair. And I can't do that all the time. It's expensive enough to pay for like cover artwork and shit like that. So I'm struggling with that because I know people, I have friends who would help me with that, but having to ask is the difficulty there, I guess. But anyway, it's still fun. I'm still doing it, and I'm super excited about the next things. So there's that. And I feel I kind of at this point have reached the end of all the questions. I hope I didn't forget anything super important or not so important. If I messed up something, then let me know and I'll tell you. I'll answer you still. But yeah, thanks once again for all these 500 subscribers. And ever since I've been losing subscribers, I was at 510, now I'm at 507, so that's fine. I'll see you later, actually, for the Toll the Hounds start today. And we'll have more interesting shit coming up real soon. And yeah, once again, thanks for all of this. I wasn't expecting any of it. I'm just extremely, extremely happy. Anyway, have a great day, and I'll talk to you later. Cheers.